vibration ruins my interview.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely something that you've got to take into consideration.
It's fine.
Hi, welcome back to the ISBC podcast. I have Philip Vinciullo joining me.
Yes,
how are you?
Very good. And Annwen Burrows to my left. Exciting times ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Today, episode 5 of the podcast, and we're talking about interviewing.
Yes, and look, obviously a lot of people getting ready to put in their submissions, a lot of students.
Yes.
And you're probably reevaluating what you're doing, or you may be preparing for certain content that you want to create.
Yep.
And I guess for those that are in that category, or if you're looking for a bit of a refresher, this could be the podcast for you.
Absolutely. So we're going to give you a lot of tips and tricks, a lot of do's and don'ts, all of those things when it comes to interviewing. I think the very first point that we have to start from, though, is preparation.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think there's no such thing as a great interview without doing prep.
Yeah.
You can't wing it. I haven't seen a great interview winged before.
No.
Look, on top of that, let's go a step further with that. I think you need to understand that a lot of the advice we give is also a little bit subjective. You know, you'll have faculty and lecturers that will have their own take on things, and 100%. You should 100% take that, and you know they're valid. They are industry professionals for a reason.
Yes.
So look, what we give you today is from our experiences, our journey, and it's just our feedback on what we think makes a great interview.
Yeah, obviously you and I were in industry for a very long time, and we've both done a lot of interviews in that time. We've taken that experience, we've refined it, we now pass it on to our students. So this is just a reflection of that.
100%. So getting back to it, yes, preparation is the number one element. I don't think you can do it justice without researching the topic and the person or the people that you were talking about.
I think it's really important too that you actually write down the questions that you plan to ask. And if you're really worried about sounding super scripted or anything like that, at least write down the lines of questioning so that you have some sort of direction to keep you on track.
Yeah, and what's your initial goal? Like, what's your objective for the interview? Don't just go in there and just say, we're just going to see how this all works out. It just doesn't work out.
No, that's right.
One suggestion I would put on the table, and it doesn't work all the time, but 99% of the time.
It works every time.
Go with your best question first.
Yes.
I think too many people want to warm up.
Lead into it.
Yeah, and the problem is that you don't end up getting there, or you get sidetracked, or by the time you get there, it's rushed. Your best content is your best question. Roll with that first and then work your way down your question list.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind that idea, actually. It's really important too that you obviously research the person that you are interviewing, but also the subject matter that is going to be talked about. So if you're talking to a musician in a particular genre, it's fine to know all about that person, but also get to know the genre of music so you have some sort of contextual idea of what is happening there.
But the misconception is you don't have to be an expert. You know, your job
True.
is to basically do the basic research and then deliver some pretty good lines of questioning. The expert or the person that you're talking to, or the group of people you're talking to, or the company, they're the ones that are supposed to be giving you those answers. What you need to do is research a strategy for great questioning.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Open-ended questions, I think, are very important when it comes to interviewing. Now, there are specific times where you want to ask a closed question, and there's a reason for that, and that's fine.
Yes, they're called politicians.
In general, you want to ask open-ended questions.
100%. I think open-ended questions gives you a bit more context, gives you a bit of a story, maybe a backstory.
Yeah.
But closed questions normally designed for our friends that are, in Parliament.
Now let's move on to the equipment when it comes to interviewing. Now, the very last thing that you need is equipment not working or failing or whatever on the day that you go to record. Make sure that everything is working the way that it should be. You're not going to have a software malfunction. You're not going to have any of those things.
Especially if you're going outside. Like obviously in the studio you have a lot more control. That's not such a problem. Like you do your line checks. Everything's kind of sweet. But it's more about when you are on the road.
Yeah.
Especially doing those kind of interviews. You want to make sure that your Zoom's got battery power. Nothing's more embarrassing than a Zoom recorder going flat.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're talking about.
And it shouldn't need to be said, but obviously like levels are really important. You want to make sure that you actually get the right level for you, for them, etc., because you get one shot at this and you look like an absolute numpty if you have awful, distorted audio that just can't be used.
First of all, congratulations for bringing back the word numpty.
Yeah, no, I felt it was important.
But no, you're right. I think it's a bit of a forgotten art, levels. I know, I know it sounds a kind of, I don't know.
Old school basic.
But it is old school basic. Levels, it's the number one thing you should check the moment you're in the studio.
Yeah.
Not just for the person you're interviewing, but in particular yourself. Like people get into set and forget mode. We just, that's my level. Nah, things change. People play around with the desk all the time. How many times have we walked into a studio and one of your fellow on-air partners or, someone else that's been, someone else that's part of the station has gone in and like changed settings.
Yes.
And you're just assuming it's the same settings. It's 9 times out of 10 you need to check it every time.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
See, I like that. It's a great saying.
Now, something I think is quite underrated, actually, is the idle chit-chat before you get into the interview. I think if you have the opportunity, and obviously a lot of the time we're rushed to get in the studio, you've only got a certain amount of time or whatever, but if you have the opportunity, have a chat before the interview starts. It's a great opportunity to learn just that little bit more.
I reckon most of the gold initially comes from the green room.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. And I think this is one thing, it's the etiquette. I think, again, this is something that could be taken to another level, is basic etiquette. If you have a guest that's come to the studio, taking their time out of their day to come and join you, the first thing you should do is A, get them in 10 to 15 minutes early, and then B, offer them a beverage, whether it be a glass of water, a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, because it's that 15-minute window that you're going to get a real insight onto how that interview is going to go. Because you know what? They might have just had a shitty day as well. So if they've had a shitty day and you're kind of like sensing that, then you need to read the room and work out how I'm going to reset this to get the best outcome for this interview. It's not just about the interview. We all got things going on in our lives.
Yeah.
If I had $1 for like every time I've had a celebrity that, on one occasion has been amazing to interview and then on another occasion has been tragic, and that's because they're human. They have bad days just like the rest of us.
Of course.
That 15 minutes in the green room, that is a great indicator of what you need to do to set the foundation for a great interview in the studio.
And on the flip side of that coin, you can't assume that everybody is comfortable behind a microphone. Just because they do whatever it is that they do doesn't mean that they're going to come in and be 100% comfortable. Like for us, it becomes second nature being behind the microphone. But for a lot of other people, they might be really nervous. So that idle chit-chat can really put people at ease.
Couldn't agree more.
Let's move on now. Active listening. I know this is a big one for you.
What'd you say?
Love it. There are 1,000 resources online that you can go and can get help with this one. But essentially, it's the practice of engaging closely with what a speaker is saying and indicating, understanding, typically by asking relevant questions, using gestures and summarising. There you go. I got that off the internet. But that's essentially what active listening means.
Look, to go a step further, I think your body language will be reflected by the person you're normally interviewing. And I think it's really important to understand that. Like we always say, if we sound upbeat on the radio or we sound upbeat on air, then the listener feels that upbeat.
Yeah.
How's that any different to the person that's sitting in front of you or the person that you're trying to talk to, even if it's over the phone? Like we need to convey an energy, we need to convey a body language, which is going to be reciprocated and to achieve the best outcome. That then transitions into active listening. Because if you're in that kind of like, if you're in that zone, you're getting a better outcome.
Yeah. You also need to be prepared to kind of follow the white rabbit down the hole. If the person is leading you in a really interesting direction, then follow that line of questioning. Don't just stick to the questions that you've written out and ignore what could be an amazing opportunity for gold.
Yeah, look, treat an interview like Aladdin. Just hop on the magic carpet ride and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Here's the beautiful thing about what we do. Not a lot of interviews, unless you're in news, talk and sport, in a live environment, most of our interviews are recorded.
Yes.
Go down the rabbit hole.
And to be honest, I think they should be. I think you should record all interviews because it's a better opportunity to refine the product.
There is, but there's still a place for live.
There is.
But no, I understand what you're trying to say. But I think the reality is in this current day and age where we recycle content and we create podcast content and we do all these kind of things, go down the rabbit hole. Go on the magic carpet ride. Don't be restricted. See where it goes. And at the end of the day, you'll be able to turn it into some gold.
If the answer that you get is unexpected or not detailed enough, or if they avoid the question altogether, it's really important that you pivot at that point and either come back to the question to try and get that answer in the end or find a better way of asking that question.
Yeah, reposition it. Try again. Go down. Repositioning is probably the best way to go.
Yeah.
But the reality is if they're avoiding, it's actually doing you a service. I think the biggest thing that when it comes to this scenario, people think, if I don't get the answer, I haven't done a good job in my interview.
Yeah.
My argument would be is if you've presented a question and they've deflected or avoided, if you've repositioned and then they've deflected and avoided, and then if you circle back and you try again, and you've done everything you can to get that particular answer and they've avoided, only person that's looking bad in that scenario is not you. On the air, it sounds like they're deflecting and avoiding. It actually makes them look bad. And to be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, it sounds like great radio because the listener knows you're trying to get and solicit a great answer and they're avoiding. So you think it's not working out well? Trust me, it's still fine.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I just want to revisit environment. I think environment is an incredibly important thing that we've touched on. We've talked about levels and we've talked about creating that really cool environment backstage in the green room prior to going on the air and etiquette with the beverage and getting to know them, etc. And then obviously we talked about levels and how important levels are.
Yep.
But the environment thing I want to touch on is when you're on the road. And I want to share an embarrassing story that happened to me as a rookie.
Bring it.
When I just started in radio and share that so people can learn about how important environment is because just when you think you've got it, you don't.
Yep.
So back when I started off in radio, I had the opportunity to go to Scotland to cover Nickelback and interview one of the boys from Nickelback and feeling very rock star, feeling very Rolling Stone.
Yep.
I won't mention which member of the band it was because that'd be embarrassing. And then what I did was...
was it Avril Lavigne?
I'm not, no.
Sorry.
That was actually pre-Avril.
Yeah, no,
pre-Avril.
Fair.
But anyway, I've put my Zoom recorder on the coffee table. I'm feeling very Rolling Stone, getting my Absolutely Fabulous on, and I'm doing my interview. I'm feeling like this is like, champagne radio.
Yes.
Very excited about the end product. And then I've realized that whilst I've been conducting this interview, sound check's been happening, but I'm not thinking about sound check because it's in the distance. It's not too bad. The levels are pretty good in there. What I haven't factored is vibration.
Oh.
So the vibration from the coffee table has basically wrecked my entire interview.
No.
So it's those little things. And here's the thing. I went through the process. I checked initial levels. I checked batteries. I had a really good experience with talent. I've sat down, got comfortable. I've got the great questions. I'm feeling like a rock star. I'm doing everything that needs to be done. And vibration ruins my interview.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something that you've got to take into consideration.
It's funny.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That is hilarious.
Please excuse my phone vibrating. Well, we've talked a lot about interviewing, the ins, the outs, the tips, the tricks, do's, don'ts, etc. Now it's your turn as a student to go and do your interviews, get some gold and bring it to your application for ISBC.
Register now and submit tomorrow.
isbc.co.